a graphic that's from the state dashboard that demonstrates the new cases are even across all of different demographics. And so, as I am telling people every chance I get, COVID does not discriminate. And seemingly, in the springtime, we were not seeing young people as affected by COVID. But I would say that is changing, or that narrative is changing as we move through the fall. So. We appreciate the governor's actions with respect to his execution of his Executive Order 53 to keep awareness of COVID front and center in the minds of citizens in the Commonwealth. And I mention it again tonight to hope that it continues to stay in the minds of our families and of our students and our community, frankly, in general, as we start to move into the winter season. It's important as we move on that we continue to wear masks, wash our hands, social distance, and we're just going to continue to keep pounding that message out as much as we can. Related to messaging, COVID reporting, as stated in an email, and I did put a copy of this just for your reference into packets. There were some concerns raised by some community members relative to the manner of notifications out to the community and the potential social and emotional impact that could have on staff, students, and families when we do send out a notification. And after taking some time to think about the process of notification, I have, as you've seen, I've continued to notify the entire school community when we do have COVID positive cases. Once they're brought to our attention, I feel it's the right thing to do. Again, we're not looking to bring any more attention to folks than necessary, but it is important that our school community be aware when we do have positive COVID cases. If for nothing else, to go back to what I said to open the meeting this evening, which is awareness, to let people know that COVID's out there and it's lurking, and unfortunately. Some of our folks are coming down with it. So we will continue to send out the reports. I did review them just to make sure that we were being, as private as possible when we notify people and not placing details in there that were unnecessary. So there were a couple of small tweaks that I made, but overall people still get the message, and that will be what we do moving forward. So that's that. Staying along those lines. I'm sorry.
I just have one question.
Sure.
In terms of, sorry, Gail. Gail had asked me to speak with. In terms of notification, I guess keeping in mind the effort to let people know that it is here. It's
Sure.
not just the one-off here. Do we think it would be effective to also note how many people are currently, at home for 2 weeks or something like that? Because the impression that I'm getting is that people are underestimating the impact that potential exposure could have. And I seem to be a little bit more or less vigilant and less careful. They're like, oh, it's, I won't get it. It's not that big of a deal. But I'm
Sure.
concerned that people aren't getting the picture that, one person could knock out
Yeah.
100 kids for 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
because of potential exposure. But
Sure.
that's
No.
a discussion, not a
And
request.
through the chair, that's a good point. I think when we talk about these types of things, where basically it would be the number of close contacts. Our close contacts are affected the most, whether they test positive or negative. They're still having to go into quarantine. Just because symptoms can appear even after being tested. So there are, a number of close contacts in some cases, and I would say recently, we don't seem to have as much recently, but that is something that I think in my letter of yesterday, or excuse me, it all blurs together, but I did state that in the preschool situation, there were close contacts there, whereas in the 2 other cases there were not. So it's kind of difficult, Dr. Chamberlain, I would think, to kind of put a number count to close close contacts, but
yeah, I think we could. I don't know if it will help. I will tell you that the numbers I have tonight are just with the cases that we're following. because our nurses are straight out, as I was saying
Sure.
earlier. So we have 168 active cases. Now, these are not all confirmed COVID or close contact, right? Could be somebody was sent home because they had a sore throat and symptoms related to that. But currently, we have 168 open, and since we started school, we've now resolved over 600 situations. Some being close contact, some being symptomatic, and then they tested negative. But I will tell you that I think those are huge numbers for a school district our size.
I do too, and frankly, through the chair, I almost wonder if seeing those numbers will be what it takes for people to be more vigilant, to be quite honest, because I feel like people just aren't getting it. They're saying, oh, well, we get a letter a week, and it's not hitting them that, think about how small, I mean, we're a town of 16,000 and 600 cases, like that's a substantial amount in a age group that's not supposed to be high risk or low risk than
Through the chair, though, that's just 600 cases of symptoms, which
Right.
is
Right.
very
So
different.
And that's the thing, that people often don't listen all that well to that, right, as far as what this actually means. We could tease it out, some of it has to do with staff. And the more you break down data, the more precarious it gets with Dr. Hanfield talking about confidentiality and making sure that we're protecting everyone involved.
Sure. And
Dr. Chairman, could you just speak at the microphone when you, maybe just repeat what you just said there, if you could?
It's about putting it out in a way that is respectful of the folks that could potentially be involved, as Dr. Hanfield said. This is very upsetting to the families that are impacted by it. And so I think maybe there's a medium ground there that we can talk about with what could be reported, but we want to make sure that we protect folks' privacy as well.
Absolutely, and I could not agree more. And maybe it's just a matter of saying, how many. I don't know how we document the impact of maybe people just got sick, or maybe people made poor choices and that impacted it. I don't know how we do it. Even if you just look at absenteeism.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys see the most granular data, so that's why I'm just
we do,
opening up for discussion.
and that's what's difficult about this whole situation, is because just because you could be a close contact for 100 different reasons.
Sure.
And making sense of that for people to impact their habits could be very challenging. Because we have many close contacts that, no fault of their own,
Sure.
ended up as a close contact. And then there's a group of others that maybe did something that maybe they shouldn't have, or they could have avoided.
Right.
And so to tease that out, to make sense for people, and not, I have to think about the way that would make it right for people to really make sense.
Sure. And like I said, that's not anything to decide on now. It just,
Yeah.
when you hear those numbers compared to, we get a letter here, a letter there,
Yeah.
it just
But keeping in
seems-
mind, you could have a big group of people that are close contact, and they all come back negative.
Sure, and that's what we're hoping for.
It is, but that doesn't, so, I don't know. So just because there are close contacts doesn't mean that there are more cases necessarily, So the correlations between some of that data is difficult to make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the point that Dot is making is that although it's no fault of their own because they were a close contact, and it may not even be the fault of a person who comes down with COVID. However, it's painting a picture of the effect that it's having on the entire, or a good portion of the school community, or the effect that it could have if people aren't careful. I don't know. I don't know that it's up to us to advertise the numbers townwide, but I don't see an issue, or I don't see that being a way of singling anyone out if we said, you know what, there are 65 or 70 people that have been affected by COVID in the Auburn Public Schools, and they're missing live school because of it, and they're quarantined because of it. I don't know how we would word that. As you said, it's something
Yeah.
that we'd have to think about.
Yeah.
But I think it does. I do understand where she's coming from, because if you see, I don't know, to me, when I hear 3 cases in our school, in our somewhat small school system, that worries me. I'm greatly concerned when I see 3 cases. But to Dot's point, maybe some people are saying, oh, wow, only 3 out of all of those. So maybe if they understood that, those are 3, but there are also many other children, staff that are affected by this because they're missing time at work. They're missing that live face-to-face education that everyone can't wait to get back to. So I understand. I don't know how we could throw those numbers out there in a way that they do protect those innocent folks who just happen to be a close contact and those innocent folks who may have come down
Yeah.
with COVID.
And I think that is the biggest impact, is, right now, we have kids that are out of school for 14 days, that are perfectly healthy and will probably remain so. Now, we are getting better at that shift to that remote learning for them, right? But as you said, it's no substitute for them being in school with their friends and their teachers. But that is the greatest impact of all this, quite frankly, beside, folks getting sick. But that's the fallout from this, is kids miss 14 days is a long time out.
Right.
It is.
And I think if that number was out there that, we have 50 Auburn school community members out of school this week for COVID-related reasons. I think that may even take some of the pressure off of the 1 or 2 who have tested positive, because now it becomes a real guessing game as to, who is out for what reason.
True.
Through the chair, as long as it's that broad, because my fear is if we, I'll use the preschool as an example. I mean, they can figure that out pretty easily if they say, oh, we have, 9 preschoolers out. Very easily we can figure out what class that is. And I would hate to lose that confidentiality, but if it was a more global, we have
District-wide number?
district-wide, I think that would be confidential.
Yeah, through the chair, I think what we could probably do is we would have to figure out the time span within which, we wanted to, to make these reports. But I don't think there's anything wrong with identifying, obviously the COVID positive cases we have, but then have a quarantine number as well. You know what I mean? So if we had a quarantine number, then people would see, for example, okay, so there was, and it actually might, I think it would maybe serve a purpose that hopefully would be positive in maintaining people's anonymity, but for people to see like the real domino effect that this has. That's the thing that I don't think people realize. Unfortunately, the athletic circumstance that we had, most recently, a lot of people now are starting to feel the impact of that, because we had close contacts that are out for 14 days, regardless of whether or not they are, they tested positive or negative. And then we've got the non-close contacts who still needed to go and get a PCR test and show demonstration that they were negative before they could enter back into school. So not even the time related to school. If you just take that, but then you add into, you have to then go get tested, and then you've got to go through all that. It's a process, and it's an unfortunate one. It's an unfortunate one. I would like to highlight, though, too, there are a lot of, and I know we all feel this way, there are a lot of people who are doing the right things, and for that, I'm appreciative, and we applaud that. It's trying to get the rest of, the people who think, either are not as in tune with it or think that it can't happen to them. It's been happening to them, so we just continue to go at it. But I think Dr. Chamberlain and I, we could talk a little bit more about, how we could perhaps present, quarantine numbers.
And I think that's probably a better wording for the community,
Sure.
is quarantining versus close contact, because
Yeah.
that's an action, right? You have to quarantine, and that may make more sense to folks, that as of, on this particular week, we had, 50 students and staff that were under quarantine, and leave it that way.
Absolutely.
That might make more sense to people, so I think that's a good
That could even be
idea.
from travel, I
Sure,
mean.
yeah, oh, absolutely, through the chair, absolutely, and I think this, so, we talked a few meetings ago, about, kind of a dashboard of our own here in the school system, and I've really been wrestling with what that might look like. I think this might be what it looks like, through this discussion tonight. I think, your cases and then the quarantine numbers, I think maybe is the way to go, so.
So if I could just ask, so if someone is a close contact to a COVID patient, they have to go get a test, And even if it comes back negative, they still have to stay out of school for 14 days.
Well, and we can't make them go and get tested,
Okay.
right? But we recommend that they do, and as does the Board of Health. But either way, they are out of school or work for 14 days.
No matter what the test results are.
No matter what. And that's because you're a close contact, you may not develop symptoms in the first 5 days. It might be day 13.
Yeah.
And so the test will tell you on that day whether you're positive or negative, but it won't tell you if you could still develop symptoms.
So that knocks out a lot of people for 14 days.
It can.
It does,
And,
yeah.
and, you know, and through the chair, if you look at the data that we have now, you know, you're seeing people becoming symptomatic at all different stages. So, you know, people at first said it was, you know, within the first 5 days or within, you know, day 3 to 6. But, you know, what we're starting to see, the data is showing us, is that up and down that spectrum, you know, we're seeing people, you know, appear symptomatic. So, even after testing, you know, negative, you know, so it's really just, I mean, we've obviously fielded, you know, phone calls and had conversations with folks that have been impacted for 14 days, and you just can't take the chance. If you send a child back or a staff member back into the schools, you know, without really being sure that they're clear of any infection, you know, then you have a whole nother circumstance. If in fact they test positive, say on day 13, we let them back in on day 9. Now we're doing this all over again with a whole nother set of people. It's tricky. And
Excuse me, and again, if someone is home quarantined, they're expected to access their classes through Zoom or, so they're still getting their schooling as best as we can
Correct.
deliver it.
Yeah, and I give it up to the teachers because they've been working really hard to make that a more seamless transition by building in more synchronous time within the school day, particularly at the middle and high school. But even at the elementary school, there's a bit more of that now than there was, and that helps the kids to go back and forth a little bit easier so that they're not missing as much school.
Jesse, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, all this conversation seems to deal with mostly parents or, you know, the parental figures. Are the teachers and staff stressing the importance of this to the students too? Like, can there be a dashboard for the kids to actually see so they can visualize and realize the impact that they themselves are having?
I don't see why not.
I mean, the older kids, you
Yeah.
know.
oh yeah, in terms of through the
It seems
chair.
like that's where some spread could be.
In terms of calling their attention to it.
Yeah.
I think that makes good sense too. It can't hurt.
And I know Mr. DeLongchamp has kept this on when he has meetings with students and in a variety of ways, talking to them, because quite frankly, our high schoolers are the ones with the most freedom. So they tend to, you know, right, that's the nature of the age. And so he's kept that on the front burner with them, in conversations with them. He meets with classes, they talk about it. You know, that idea of that spider web is what they don't understand, right? They think, well, I might just get sick. But they don't understand if they get sick and they're with 6 friends. Now, those 6 friends, and then who are they with, right? That's the piece they don't understand. So I know he's been working on that, and I know the nurses have also, the high school nurses have provided him with some information to share specifically at a student level to kind of bring that to the forefront.
All right, good, thanks.
Okay, I guess we can
Thank you.
have another discussion about that, you know, and then a couple of weeks from now.
Sure.
I think we're going to be at this for quite a while, so.
Yeah, I mean, through the chair, we can, Dr. Chamberlain and I, we can work on this, and, you know, dashboard / kind of reporting mechanism. Yeah, we can have that on was it November 24th meeting? We can have that, but sure. Shouldn't take us that long to do that.
Sounds great, thank you.
Sure. October air quality report, as we had talked about at the start of the school year, in September, we had a third-party contractor come in and look at all of the air and take baseline readings in the buildings when they weren't occupied. October 27th, we had the same contractor come back to take readings with the buildings occupied, and that air quality has met acceptable thresholds across all buildings and rooms that were tested. The report is actually due in on Thursday, so I'll share that with you on our November 24th meeting. But I just wanted to let you know that we did follow through with that, and we will continue to follow through with that every month as indicated. But that's good news. on the air quality in classrooms. We continue our ongoing maintenance, as we've talked several times, whether it be about town meeting articles or what have you. Our HVAC units continue to be examined and maintenance being completed. The Atmos air units, the bipolarization units, those have a definitive ship date of December 4th. Those have been slightly delayed because of the COVID crisis around the country, and some of the plants have been shut down a little bit due to some issues where they're being made. But we have a without fail date of December 4th to where they'll be with us, and they should be shipping all 275 units at the same time. We thought at first it might be piecemeal, but they'll be sending all 275. And then, in speaking with Mr. Fahey, we will have those up and operational, at least in the elementary schools, within a week. Within a week. We have to unpack them and just make sure that they work upon receipt. And once we make sure that they work, we will then deploy them into classrooms. So those are coming, and we're excited about those coming in.
All right, moving on.
Budget presentations. This year, because of the lean budget year that we are having, and at first I'd like to thank the members of town meeting and our town boards and town administration for their support of the warrant articles, all successfully passed on the 27th. But we also had a reconsideration of the 21 school budget at that meeting, as you know. And if anybody's interested in reviewing, the rationale and reason why we needed to down our budget number, that information is available on our website in a little presentation that I put together. But looking forward into FY22, clearly it's going to be a very difficult year, even more so than last year. And we've made the decision that probably what makes the most sense right now is we're looking to preserve our existing staff. If we can keep what we have intact in terms of faculty, staff, counselors, so on and so forth, and not lose anybody, that would be an excellent scenario. So to that end, budget presentations will be really streamlined this year. So we've asked principals, central office folks, myself, we'll do the traditional budget kind of kickoff presentation. We've asked our principals to join us via Zoom to deliver kind of just a few opening words. You haven't really heard from them all school year. So they'll share their expected accomplishments for this year and what they hope to accomplish next year. So essentially their executive summaries. And then we'll have budget wrap up. This year we can do it all in one night, we believe. And so we would like to begin the meeting at 6 p.m. on December the 9th, if that works for people. If not, we're more than welcome to keep it at 6:30, but we're bringing everybody in at about 10 minutes a spot. We think we can probably go through it in about an hour and a half.
Hey, Casey, question. I'm
Yes.
looking at the school committee meeting calendar that we got in the beginning.
Yep.
And it says Wednesday, December 2nd, and Wednesday, December 16th, I think. Yeah, that's the 6th. So are we keeping those meetings too and adding
No,
December 9th?
you know what? I apologize. It's a typo on my fault. That really should say December the 2nd. I apologize. Or we could go the 16th. I mean, Cecilia, what do you think? 2nd would be fine? Yeah, no, okay, yeah, December 2nd. I apologize.
So we're going to do December 2nd, not December 9th?
Correct. Forget I even wrote that number down. I
Oh, okay.
apologize. I apologize.
So the sooner the better.
Yeah, and right, and we won't have the 3 nights of budgets right in a row. We'll go right through things, and we should be able to do that without a problem on December the 2nd.
And that'll be at 6.
And that'll be at 6 if that meets with the committee's approval.
That's fine.
That'll be okay? All right,
Sounds
great.
good.
Thank you very much. I just figured, through the chair, I just figured if we just put it in one night, then it eliminates having to come out multiple nights in December, and where we have the venue of Zoom, we could do it that way. So thank you, I appreciate that, as will the administration. Also wanted to bring to your attention, and this is something that you were aware of last year. Dr. Brunel had introduced the topic of bringing therapy dogs into the Auburn Public Schools to help social emotional issues of primarily our students, but I'm sure some of our faculty will also benefit. I'm very excited and very appreciative of the work that Mrs. Kim Ciccarella has done at the Auburn Middle School. She and her dog Ella completed their therapy dog training, I think the middle of October. And she is already got Ella going at the middle school with Mr. Desto's approval and support. And we'll see how it goes. This is something that we're very excited about, and I'm guessing it will meet with rave reviews and great success, and it'll be definitely something we then will look to perhaps expand across the buildings. I don't think we'll be buying dogs as a school committee, but I don't think that you'll see a PO for 6 dogs, but there are plenty of our counselors who are willing to make the investment as not only a personal addition to their family, but also to bring them to school every day. So, like I said, very excited about that, and we're starting to get to the point where we can start talking about things other than COVID. So I'll probably ask Kim to come and talk a little bit, even if it's through Zoom. You can meet Ella, and she can talk a little bit about how she's using her to help our kids in the building.
Through the chair, I just have to say Maddie got to meet her and was in love.
Perfect.
She didn't want her to leave.
Excellent.
So it made her day.
Excellent. Well, that's part of what we're trying to do, so that's really great.
The superintendent school committee conference every year has had a nice presentation of therapy dogs.
Yeah.
And they have quite a training program. And actually, the lady that spearheads it is in the Fitchburg schools.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's been nice to see how it's working, and I'm sure it'll be a great asset to Auburn.
Yeah, and I really appreciate Kim taking her own personal time to do this, because you have to go to a number of trainings and things like that. So I really appreciate her doing that, and her dedication to the kids at the middle school to bring this in as another therapeutic component to what we do there for our students. So we will try to tee her up at a meeting in the not-too-distant future. Moving on, we have a donation from R.H. White. R.H. White graciously has donated boxes of school supplies for our students, and so we especially are thankful for their generosity during this difficult time. So we would need a motion to accept those with gratitude.
I would entertain that motion.
Make a motion to accept the boxes of school supplies from RH White with gratitude.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
They've just always been a good company and always thinking of Auburn.
Agreed.
I agree. Thank you so much to R.H. White.
Agreed. In anticipation of, through the chair, in anticipation of your acceptance, we got a letter dated November 9th to go out to Jim McCarthy, the president and CEO, just to say thank you very much for their generosity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And to the Felsignos for helping with that.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote. And we now move on to new business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one item of new business. As many of you have been on the committee for a while, you're probably familiar with when superintendents come to a district and they're new, they have an entry plan that they put together. It's usually a 3-part plan. This was mentioned in my goals as well. So I just wanted to let you know that as we're getting to a place where, as I said earlier, we can start moving past COVID. Even though I'm not new to the district, but I'm new to the role, I do have an entry plan that's before you this evening. The first part of it really will be to start to get out and really visit, as is indicated in the entry plan, phase 1 that I placed in your packets tonight. Getting out and having a discussion with all of the different stakeholders in town around 3 questions. What do you feel the Auburn Public Schools does well? What areas of the Auburn Public Schools do you feel might need improvement? And what do you feel could advance the successes of teachers and students in the Auburn Public Schools? And you can see, I won't go through the list of stakeholders there, but you can see it's fairly comprehensive, from town government to state representatives to department heads here in the town, to different agencies and groups, church officials, so on and so forth, people that work within the school system, students, parents, et cetera. I'll also be doing some more detailed observations, just to kind of get a feel of certain things at schools, although I've kind of already done that, but to continue that. So I'll be popping up at arrivals and dismissals, and be in hallways, classrooms, different meetings, different co-curricular events that will go on. And then I'll be doing kind of a review of the documents that we have within the district, and as you can see here, it's, it varies from school committee policies, which I've already kind of started doing, but the strategic plan for the district, which, will come in the third phase of this, to see, kind of what I uncover and what, if any, changes we might need to make to that strategic plan. Financial audits, policies, you name it, all kinds of data from attendance to graduation, discipline, handbooks, professional development programs, just anything, anything that will inform me about anything and everything that's got to do with the Auburn Public Schools. So, and then once I have all of that information gathered and I'm able to make some conclusions, I will put that in a report that I will share publicly here to you. And then from there, we will look to see where that takes us as it relates, as I said earlier, to evaluating our current strategic plan. And if it makes sense to keep it the way it is, to have some amendments to it, we'll just have to wait and see. But it is time for us to start moving forward as a district, like I said, even in the face of COVID. And so I think this is a pretty comprehensive look, at the Auburn Public Schools, and certainly I'm eager to see what people have to say, and then we'll go from there. But I just wanted to lay that out there for you. And then I'll also be putting this up on the district website as well, so if people can take a look at, kind of the three-phased approach. So I don't think I had anyone put this up yet, but I will.
Any questions or comments?
Looks very thorough. Good luck.
In all your spare
I see a
time.
lot of heavy reading in your future.
Yeah, through the chair, I would agree with you, but I would also say, too, that I think, as I was thinking about this and really thinking about this over the last couple of months, and then actually had some time to put it to paper, we've had a terrific, I think, run of success in the Auburn Public Schools for a variety of reasons, and it's in large part to so many different people and Dr. Brunel's leadership and, everyone who's come, with her and before her. In the 12 years that she was here, we did a lot of great things, and, it's my real intention, to hopefully be here, at least 12 years. And so I think now with COVID, it's actually, it's not maybe the best lead-in I would have used to re-examine the district and the strategic plan and where we go, or where the direction of the district goes. But I think right now it's a good time to assess where we are, because essentially what we're going to have to do, or what I'm looking at doing, is kind of creating a recovery from COVID plan. That's really what I think the next, 1 to 3 years is going to be. And then from there, setting the course, with everyone's input, for the next several years. So in any event, the more on that to come. I just wanted to bring that to your attention to let you know that, we are starting to move forward and get the business of the district underway.
Looks
Did our
good.
kids ever show up? No? Oh.
That's okay.
I didn't hear from you. I didn't hear from them.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
If there are no questions, we'll move on to teaching and learning. Dr. Chamberlain?
Okay, so I won't spend too much time on this, but one thing that you've brought up is how is all of this impacting our student attendance? And so the last time I was here, there was some data collection issues with Power School, which continue a bit. But I was able to work through some numbers, and all of the schools are running at about 95% attendance. Now, that varies, right, whether it's in-person or remote. But the way they're doing that, as I spoke of earlier, is allowing kids to make that transition from being in school to being at home, and being at home and coming back into school. So there continues work to be done. But I think we've taken some really positive steps toward supporting kids. What we now know is some of our most struggling kids, particularly at the high school and middle school level, are the ones who are most reluctant learners. And so in both schools, there's a concerted, individualized process for reaching out to families to find a way to make those connections. And honestly, that's even happening at our primary grades, although the numbers are fewer, right? But there are kids that just don't participate to the level that we would like them to be. And so each school is undertaking on their own, whether it's through guidance or the principal or whoever they think is going to make that best connection with the family, to do that and to find individualized approaches to get these kids engaged in school. Because for some students, they can acclimate, right, between remote and in person. Others, for a wide range of reasons, really struggle. So there's a lot of work being done right now to individualize the approach we take with some kids to make sure that everybody is pulled in as often as they possibly can be to the learning environment. So that's a process that will continue to unfold, but just so you know, there's great work being done at each of the buildings around making sure we're reaching our kids. And just to move on to teaching and learning, which is just so exciting to talk about, that we had parent-teacher conferences, which were well received. November 3rd was our first full scheduled professional day since we started school, and primarily it was teachers were allowed to use it for planning purposes, right, to prepare for whatever lessons were upcoming. But at each school, they also took about an hour to have some staff just share out things that were really working well for them in the classroom, whether in person or remote. That was done by building. It was very well received. There were things about how to use multiple screens when you're presenting to kids at home and in class at the same time, and a variety of different programs that folks are using. So that was well received. There was another bit of time with the administrator, and in some cases, the direction was, go out and take a walk for half an hour, or do a facial, or watch some sports, or whatever it was, to give them all a break. So that was our first PD day, which was well received and well appreciated for the time that they had. We're also starting some of our initial assessments with kids. So at the primary, they're doing dibbles, the iReady's happening at Swanson Road. There have been a number of formative assessments that have happened at both the middle school and the high school to create some opportunities for intervention. So it's starting to feel like we're doing some normal things that we always did. All of these have had to be modified, obviously. How we're doing dibbles is different than we've done it in the past. We're purchasing a couple of additional assessments through dibbles that can be done whole class, so it won't take teachers as much time one-to-one to assess students around comprehension. We're going to expand our use of iReady down from kindergarten up through 5th grade. That's a program that will allow kids to be assessed through a diagnostic assessment and then get put into a pathway that's tailored to what they've shown that they need help with. And so we're excited about that. We're going to be using the grant money that's available, that we have a little bit left to use. So that's going to be a nice addition. And if, worst case scenario, we have to go remote or a student is home for 14 days, programming like that will make it easier to support their continued development while they're at home. So we're still investigating a couple of options for middle and high school as well. They're a little bit different, right, because of the nature of the specificity of the teaching and learning. But they have some good options there as well that we're looking at. So it's feeling a little bit more normal, even though it's a whole new world, but starting to talk about some things that normally that's all I would be talking about. So yeah, we're off to a good start, and it's gone well, and the teachers have just been tremendous in their support of all this.
Beth, on a little bit different note, how are we doing with substitutes? Because I heard from a school that they didn't have enough substitutes for a certain day or whatever.
Yeah, subs are very difficult right now. So back with the return to school team, we had talked about, we really didn't want our typical, how we have always done subs with lots of different people in and out of buildings, because many of our subs worked in other places and then they were coming into our schools. Sure. And we didn't want to do that. So we've hired 4 long-term subs, still looking to hire another one that we can use across the district. That's not, yeah. It's not.
School starts too early in the morning.
And to be quite honest, it's not nearly enough to cover the absences some days.
Yeah.
But we had discussed that with the principals, quite some time ago, that they were going to need to be prepared to switch staff around a little bit in the event folks were out. So it is not perfect, but the other side of that is to have people in and out that we're not sure where they've been. So we've hired these 4, and then we have some tried and true subs that have been with us for a long time, that if they're willing to come in, we have had them come in, folks that have been with us for a long time, but some of those now are a little hesitant to come in with the
Yeah.
increasing numbers. So we are doing the very best we can, and when I tell you, I send out invites for interviews nearly every day between things from School Spring and Indeed. But, recently I've had a couple of people that we've hired, and then at the very last minute, they've changed their mind. Mrs. Reedy's had a couple of folks like that. So we're trying, and we recognize the strain that this is putting on teachers and staff and students. It's a tough area right now, for sure.
So
I'm sure it is.
through the chair, though, have we actually established a threshold of like teacher to child ratio in buildings, at which point we say like we've hit our limit? I mean, or I'm assuming we're not there yet because we still have kids in school, but have we thought ahead for that?
So through the chair, every principal so to go back to what Dr. Chamberlain was saying earlier, so over the summertime, that was some of the planning, to say, okay, listen, you're down 4 teachers and only have 2 subs. And then we asked them to then layer, okay, run through a scenario to where, you can still operate your building minus 1 person, then go another person, and then tell us where you get to when you don't think you can safely have kids be in the building. And so we do have those thresholds established.
Okay.
The difficulty in that, though, is that it would be it might be very difficult to plan for, because, for example, if 6 teachers, call out on a given day, and you have 2 personal days, and you have something going on, it could be one of those kind of quick calls, to the point where it becomes an all remote day, or so we have gone through that.
Thank you. That's good to know. I was just asking, given that we are seeing increases and we're going into
Sure.
cold season, so.
And I will tell you that every day we're looking ahead to what's in Ready Sub for who's
Right.
going to be out, to kind of already have it in your head a day that, now we had a few people out sick, where are we? We're calling schools. Schools are collaborating with staff when they need to be. I mean, we don't want people going from building to building, but if we need a sub from one building to another, we have to do that, for the safety of kids. But it's challenging. It's challenging, but the principals communicate regularly. We're watching all of that and trying to stay ahead of it as best we can.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate the flexibility of the leadership team and teachers and all staff, because, without that flexibility, we're not going to get to where we need to be. So it's just the way it is. And I understand the way it works with coverages, and sometimes, someone may be expecting a couple preparation periods, and they've got to give one up, and that's, now, if something like that happens, do we take care of those teachers financially?
Yes.
It's excellent that we have that flexibility. So please thank them for us, not only for that, but for everything that they've been doing to get us to where we're at right now. As you said, things under the conditions that we're living in right now, everything is going fairly well, other than this substitute piece or lack of manpower. But no, I feel like things are going well, and it's been a team effort. And I for one appreciate it, and I'm sure the rest of the committee does.
Yeah.
I'd say too, the willingness of staff, so, we've asked them if they don't feel well to stay home. But sometimes it's a day that they normally would have come into school, right? Little runny nose, little scratchy throat, but we're saying, we don't want you to come in.
Yeah, just in case.
But their flexibility with then being willing to teach remotely has been terrific, right? Whether it's an IA who now runs small groups from home, or a teacher who's now running their class from home, right? Now, that's another logistical thing, because you have to have someone in the class with the kids, but that's really helpful that staff is willing to do that. And so that's another thing, I just want to give them a shout out for that, because you know, it's challenging to make those swaps, whether it's kids or staff, it's not easy, but everybody is doing their very, very best to make sure that kids are getting the education they need.
Well, I'm sure many of them are watching this meeting right now, but for those that aren't, if you could just pass along that message.
Great, thank you.
I'd be happy to do so. Thank you.
Actually, I think there's only one teacher probably watching. I won't call her out again.
I'm Mrs. Guitar.
Oh.
She does hear you, because she does send her hellos the following morning, so.
I wasn't going to call her out. Dr. McCrillis, nice job. Well, thank you for that report. It was a little bit of a bright spot.
We're
And-
getting there, through the chair, we're getting there. You know, Dr. Chamberlain and I were just even talking about today. You know, I was at the high school in the morning for something, she happened to come out after the preschool hours, and, you know, again, just to stand there and watch field hockey game, you know, that was in progress, or talk about teaching and learning, or walking into classrooms, or popping into, you know, a virtual session and seeing what's going on, and, you know, it's starting to move forward, and so, yeah, it's good, it's feeling good. It's a lot of
Yeah,
work, but it's feeling good.
It's like we don't even notice the masks anymore. That's what
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with you there.
And I can say through the chair, they're making it work. I know my kindergartner was so excited, he had his math lesson outside. And they were all, you know, all separated, and my second grader was not happy because this happened during his recess. So his younger brother kept yelling at him. But it was like the highlight that they got to do math outside. And it's really nice.
Some good things happening. Speaking of good things happening, we'll
Yeah.
now move on to business and financial. If you could try not to upstage the superintendent's entry plan and teaching and
I won't
learning.
do that, I promised. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
In your packets, I provided a year-to-date budget dated November 5th. And with that, accompanying that, I have a budget transfer list. Most of them are between the same series, but there is a grouping between different series that I'll need your approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I also just want to let you know that Dr. Hanfield and I have been meeting very regularly, keeping track of the budget, and we're taking a very conservative approach, but we are doing well, and we're in a good spot right now, and we'll continue to monitor things to make sure we stay that way, so.
Great, thank you. I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfers between the series as presented.
Second it.
Any discussion?
I've just never seen a budget so exact. 1 cent transfer, 4 cent transfer.
Try to keep it clean.
I guess so.
Have to know where it all is.
You want to look at my checkbook?
Sure, sure. So,
I told
thank
you
for
it was
that
going to be a
support.
great presentation, didn't I?
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is a vote. Thank you. And thanks to everyone in your office as well. I'm sure that this is a burden on them as well. Is there anything else, Dr. Hanfield?
Not this evening,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So.
Did you have something, Dr. Chamberlain? No.
So next time we're here is Tuesday, November 24th.
It is a vote. Good night, everyone.
Good night.